Hi guys and girls, I'm Q&Ant and welcome to the latest episode of Q&Ant. So this is the video series where I basically take a load of questions and comments and suggestions and all that other lovely stuff from supporters, whether they are on Patreon or here as YouTube members, and we put them together in a video and I address them all. So first up, as always, I really want to thank everyone for the continued support here. It really does mean a huge amount to me. And although I've said it many times before, it still remains true. Without your support, the channel really wouldn't be what it is today. So I really do owe you all a huge debt. Thank you for that. Let's dive in there now. Let's take a look at these questions. Right then, let's start with Avon NZ or Avon NZ. Any comments or opinion on the use of VR for remote collaboration and business post-COVID? So yeah, that's a really interesting question, isn't it? I think the whole thing with the virus right now is that it's definitely going to be world changing in many different ways. Not just, of course, for the horrible disaster that it is, but for the way it's affecting the way people are going about their lives. Specifically business, as you mentioned, with a lot of people now working from home. And yeah, it's quite interesting actually to see that there are quite a few number of businesses that now they've made the transition to working from home actually want to stick to it. I think VR, virtual reality, will be a natural extension for that for many people, but I don't think the tech is quite there just yet. I think there's going to be a needed universal standard. VR chat, of course, is good, but we need something a bit more robust, maybe something like Discord or Zoom that allows people to plug in their different virtual reality sets, regardless of what set they actually have. But yeah, I think it will come eventually. It makes sense. It's a natural step, I think. Right, 712 says he has many questions related to Elite, but at the moment the only answers could just be speculation. So let's change the subject and instead talk about the desire to start a YouTube channel. A lot of uncertainties and doubts. Main concern is about balance between the three aspects of the whole project. So content, quality and consistency. As far as I know, that's what it's all about. So what's my personal experience with this? So yeah, it is very much a difficult one, and I think you could throw a fourth aspect in there actually, which is about time constraints and fitting everything into your day. For me, very early on, that was the biggest issue, particularly with running a business and having a family and other things going on in life. Fitting in YouTube time certainly isn't easy, and it's still not. For most part, I spend probably 30 to 35 hours a week on YouTube and all the related aspects that go along with it. But it really depends on whether or not you want to be a full-time YouTuber or whether you just want to do the occasional thing. But focusing on the question, quality and consistency are definitely the two biggest issues there. And consistency, I'd say, is for the YouTube algorithm. That really likes you being consistent, weekly, daily, monthly videos, whatever you decide upon. You just really need to stick to it because that's what works for the YouTube algorithm. For the audience, though, you definitely want quality. Now, YouTube themselves will tell you that these are the same things, that the audience and the algorithm are indistinguishable from each other, but in reality that's not the case. My advice would be to go for quality first. Go for the absolute highest quality that you can manage, and then try and get as best you can with that, as experience as you can with that, because over time you'll get better and more efficient at producing that sort of quality, and that will then naturally become a consistency thing. Really, it's never that easy to give advice about YouTube. It's a very difficult thing to actually get into, and I think nowadays is probably harder than it was a few years back. But definitely remember those two things, consistency and quality, are definitely the things you want to go for. Quality, in my opinion, over consistency, but again, for the YouTube algorithm, consistency is very important. A lot of people actually forget that and miss out on that aspect. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Steve wants to know what music I use for the Elite Dangerous videos. So there's a whole bunch of different music I use. Right now you can hear Stellar Drone playing in the background. These are very good tracks, very nice tracks. There's a whole bunch of them, and they are totally happy for you to use them on your videos. And you've probably heard them on other videos from other YouTubers, no doubt. Now you can also use the YouTube's own royalty-free videos, or music rather. I tend to avoid that myself, but it is an option. And then of course there's the licensing websites which you can sign up to for a fixed fee and use their entire library. There's actually a few of these you can use. One is MusicBed. These are very good, musicbed.com, and also Epidemic Sound, also a very, very good website. Just check them out, pay subscription fee, and you're good to go. So Keith talks about their thoughts on, and their plans rather, for using the fleet carrier. So this is for travelling between the sections of the Deep Space Support Array. So this is a network of fleet carriers that are being set up by Fleetcom and a bunch of other people, but basically a big network of carriers spread across the entire galaxy. And it looks like Keith wants to spend time travelling between these on their fleet carrier and getting players across the bulk of the initial journey there. So yeah, I think that's a very good idea. I do think that fleet carriers will create some emergent gameplay, perhaps not what a lot of people were originally expecting years ago, but nonetheless, they're mobile stations, so it's only natural that they're going to bring these sort of options to people. And I think for your example there, it's just going to be a case of making people aware of your services that you're offering. So there's a Discord server you can use. You might already be in there, called Fleet Carrier Owners Club, and I'll put a link in the video description. But just join up with that, and there's a whole bunch of people arranging and organising different services. And in fact, I think you'll even get your own Fleet Carrier channel in there if you want to use that. Okay, so Mike wants to talk about flight and space sims. This time talking about controllers, specifically stagnant offerings from the major companies such as Thrustmaster and Logitech. So X52 and X56 are holdovers that are 15 years old. None of the Logitech flight offerings were actually designed there. Yep, that's very true. The T1600K is getting up there, I think. The flight yokes and throttle quadrants are equally stagnant, with the exception of the honeycomb. I was actually going to mention the honeycomb as a potential new offering there, but yeah, you're right, that's really the only one out there. So do I think that companies are going to offer new control units as these games and these genres are becoming more popular? So I really don't know. I think if they work well as they do, then there's not really much incentive for these companies to actually offer anything new. They're going to have a high markup on the offerings they've already got, so it makes sense that they just keep producing the current stuff. I think what we're more likely to see is that as the likes of Flight Simulator become more popular, they're going to start entering into the mainstream a bit. And although there's always without a doubt going to be an element of Microsoft Flight Simulator, for example, being supportive of the hardcore flight sim industry and those sort of players who love that sort of thing, the people who are willing to spend big money on various equipment, there's no doubt going to be a push as well for the same game, for Flight Sim to be a big deal on the Xbox, whether that's the Xbox One or the Xbox Series X. And it will naturally follow that will mean that most players will want to use a standard Xbox controller. So I think the next push is really going to be for flight sims and space sims to become ever more compatible with more simple control methods. The only hope is that they still remain focused on the hardcore as well, and therefore offer both audiences what they actually want. So Gert wants to know about the balancing of earning credits. Recently made a long trip into the black in their 64 light year Phantom. Didn't do much exploration, so the codex was all new. It would be nice to know the earned credits along the way. I think that would be a very good idea. It'd be nice to keep track of that, wouldn't it? You can kind of do it manually, I guess, but that's far from ideal. Back in the station, the trip paid me 30 million credits, which isn't much compared to mining in the same time. Why is this game still not well balanced after all these years? That really is a very, very good question, isn't it? And to be honest, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, from the outside looking in, it's always difficult to judge what developers and designers are actually deciding. Is it a case that they don't know how to balance things? Is it a case that they think things are correctly balanced? Is it a case that they can't come to a unanimous agreement between them? Whatever it is, there's definitely something not playing right with what's going on there. For example, combat for the most part is underpaid. I know you can go out and get missions and earn combat money that way, but when most people think of combat, they're not thinking of it in those terms. Exploration can pay out a lot of money. You didn't say how long you was actually out there. 30 million credits is actually very low. You can actually earn significantly more than that. But you're right, it still doesn't compare to mining. In fact, nothing does. Many people's argument is to just nerf mining and bring that down, but my argument would be to bring everything up closer to being in line with mining. I do think, that said, that part of Frontier's reasoning for this is that they want players to try different activities, and if all activities paid equal or thereabouts, it would give less incentive for people to actually go and try different activities. For example, if people liked combat and they could get paid a lot of money for combat, why would they ever go and mine? For the most part, they probably wouldn't. So I suspect it's partly intended to drive people from one activity to the other, but end of the day, balance is way off, and I do think it's something that needs to be looked at. It's only going to get worse with next era if it's not something they fix soon. Okay, Neil wants to know what music I like to listen to while playing Elite Dangerous. So I listen to a lot of different music. I live in a household with 2 kids and a wife. They're always playing their own music, fairly loudly I guess, so there's always that going on. But when I get the chance to listen to my own music, then one thing I've recently been playing, particularly on Deep Space Journeys, and if you like the sort of music that's playing right now, which is Stellar Drone, then you could do a lot worse than check out Carbon-Based Lifeforms. Available on YouTube to listen to, of course. They've got a lot of good tracks, very nice electronic-based music, so yeah, I do like listening to them on those Deep Space Journeys. So Derek wants to know if I've got any information on whether or not Planet Zoo may come to console. So nope, I don't have any information on that, but that said, Planet Coaster is coming to consoles very soon. And yes, it's been quite a few years since Planet Coaster was released, but Frontier have obviously decided it's worth to put that over to console. So I'd be very surprised if at some point Planet Zoo doesn't also end up over on consoles as well. So really, I suspect it's just a matter of time. So Gabriel wants to know my thoughts on the results of the unofficial survey that was posted just after the Beta 1. So for that, you can see the results of the survey linked in the video description. For me, I think I wasn't surprised by anything I saw there. It all made a lot of sense and pretty much matched what I've been seeing in my YouTube comments and around the internet. I think broadly speaking, you could break that down into 2 different sections. At first being the cost of different things in the first beta, which were adjusted and much improved for the second beta and therefore release. And then the second segment, which had a lot of people actually questioning what fleet carriers were actually for, and that perhaps they could have a load of improvements made for them. I do like fleet carriers. I think they do bring something to the game. Personally, they're not really what I was expecting initially. I was hoping for something that would allow for a bit more variety of gameplay, something that would perhaps bring new gameplay. I think for the most part they tie into existing gameplay, which is good. They allow us new ways to interact with what's already there. As you go on to say, the Deep Space Support Array, I think we're going to see a lot more things like that, particularly Distant Worlds 3. If there is ever a Distant Worlds 3, will be especially interesting to see how they do that with fleet carriers. But my personal theory here, and that this may be completely unfounded, it's just speculation after all, is that fleet carriers may be an early step for what comes in next era. There were some rumours and some leaks suggesting that there may be base building, so what if fleet carriers had something to do with that, either being the bases themselves or being the support ships needed to get out to build bases in the depths of space. I guess we'd have to see, but yeah, fleet carriers are kind of a 2-sided coin for me. On the one side, they're very nice. On the other side, I think they could perhaps do with a bit more content for them. So Spidey talks about their player faction, how they've shaped the game. So it's actually really interesting. I don't think initially that was the idea of Elite Dangerous back in 2014. The background simulation was merely there to be a background simulation, a tapestry of events going on in the background, sort of naturally relating and naturally being impacted by whatever the players got up to. As far as I know, Frontier didn't actually set out with the idea of making a game that players could or would actually go out their way to affect and change with their gameplay. So that was kind of an emergent thing, a thing that players decided to do along the way kind of naturally, and Frontier then adjusted the game accordingly, allowing player factions to become a thing and impact the BGS. So it's kind of a natural evolution of the game, and you're quite right, there's not many other activities going on in the game right now aside from the standard gameplay. I think everyone's really holding their breath for the next era. Let's hope it's something good. So Samarkand talked about the ability to buy and sell on a fleet carrier, and buy and sell at the same time. That is, for example, buying tritium at 35,000 and selling at 40,000 at the same time. So honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. And the reason for that is because I don't think Frontier want too much in the way of automated money making in the game. And I think that really is a real shame. Obviously, there's some people out there who think doing such would bring the game a little bit too close to what EVE Online offers. But EVE Online is actually a fantastic game, and there's definitely some room for that type of gameplay in Elite Dangerous. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen. And what are my thoughts on the carrier model types? You know, when filming some of the carrier footage from the videos, I actually found that if you orientate the camera on its side, so placing the fleet carrier vertically, it actually looks like a better model. I think Frontier missed a beat there. They could have kind of orientated the carrier around in a different direction and perhaps made it look a little bit better. But we'll have to see. See what Frontier offer with terms of skins and maybe some type of ship kits as well. Only time will tell with regards to that. Okay, Trip wants to know about some of my go-to games I fall back on, and a single sentence describing why for each. So I assume you mean aside from Elite Dangerous, so one of those complete opposite end of the spectrum to something like Elite would be Animal Crossing. Got that back in March. I've actually been playing every day since, even if only for like 10-15 minutes at a time. Reason for that? It's absolutely relaxing, a real nice game to chill to. And another game in a similar vein on the Switch would be Pokemon, for the same reasons. A lot of fun, too, like going around just collecting bits and pieces and just relaxing to things. I regularly drop in on Witcher 3. I've started that game many different times, simply because a wonderful, beautiful, realised world. Very nice. In terms of story, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, perhaps one of the best games ever made in terms of story. Very well executed. In fact, there's a lot of games out there that always fail to realise that audio is just as important as visuals, and Hellblade actually delivers in that regard. In fact, it tries to really do something with every sense that you actually play the game with. Very nice indeed. Probably, like I say, one of my best titles of all time. And two other games that I'd like to drop in on, one less so nowadays I guess, is World of Warcraft. That's the one I really haven't jumped into for a while, but used to be a regular thing for me. And the other is Warframe. So I don't play that consistently, but when I do, I like to really blast it out. But again, it's something I jump in from a few times a year perhaps. Another very well put together game. Commander Civilian wants to know what game glitch I've enjoyed the most, such as that it adds to the game itself. Case example, the high altitude smack from Skyrim's Giants is a fan favourite. Yeah, that certainly was a good one. So for me, I don't really think there's standout glitches that I've used time and time again. There's always been glitches that have either left me frustrated or left me laughing or just bewildered in pretty much all games, going right back to pretty much as long as I can remember, really, way back on the Spectrum 48K. But for the most part, when it comes to glitches, the funniest thing, the most entertaining thing, is searching YouTube for game glitch compilation videos. There's a lot of fun stuff out there to watch, and nearly always gives me a chuckle or two. So yeah, if you don't do that yourself, perhaps give it a try. Anyway, that brings us to an end of this particular video. As always, thank you for all the questions and suggestions and comments. And again, thank you for all your support. It really does mean the world to me. And seriously, without it, the channel really wouldn't be what it is today. So I really do owe you all a huge thank you and a huge sense of gratitude there. So thanks for that. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.